كوني امرأة خطيرة, be a dangerous woman. And I think that that is exactly what differentiates us, is that we use a lot of soul. We have an entire genre that is dedicated to using dark comedy, satire, and humor to criticize your opponent. And it's called al-hijaa. Arabic was very much the language of science, was very much the language of al-hujja. We do it from our own, essence, from knowing our audience very well, from centering our audience, centering their stories, centering their comments, centering their feedback. Data is extremely important. But when it comes to media, I'd love for us to see in the region more of the emotion. And one of the women stood up and said, please make sure you release this episode.
It was such a pleasure to have you on Impact Talk and learn more about Khateera. Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Impact Talk. Today, I'm honored to host Rana Askoul, co-founder and co-CEO of Khateera, an Arab women-centric creative house and digital media platform. Khateera is on a mission to reframe narratives about Arab women, celebrating their intelligence, heritage, progressive spirits. With their content, they tackle vital topics such as gender roles, women's health and empowerment, all while fostering a strong sense of community of women. Rana, welcome to Impact Talk.
Thank you, Nadine. Pleasure to be with you here.
Thank you. So let's talk about Khateera, because I discovered your platform a couple of weeks ago, honestly, and I was very pleasantly surprised by the content that you produce. But let's start from the beginning. What Khateera means and how did you start this platform?
A beautiful question. Khateera actually means dangerous in the feminine version. As you know, Arabic language is very gendered, so there is the feminine and the masculine version of almost every word. And Khateera means dangerous. But it's also beyond the linguistic kind of translation of the term. Khateera is a way that we use in the Arab world in many different countries, almost all countries, to pay a compliment to a woman. So if you go around and call a woman Khateera, what you're doing is you're giving her, you're admiring something she did, something impactful, something really bold, something courageous, something that has resonance. And so you'd look and you'd be like, Khateera.
It's a very positive word.
It's a very positive word. It's not dangerous as in like something is, to be scared of. On the contrary, it's something to embrace. It's something to really, to really take on. And Khateera came to really be able to embrace that part of ourselves as Arab women, the part that is bold, that is courageous, that is doing something of impact. And just a bit on how it came about and how Khateera came about. Khateera actually came through Khateera's founder and my co-CEO and chief of content, Amanda Abu Abdallah. She came back in 2018 with the concept of Khateera as a platform that produces Arab women-centric content. At the time, she came with that idea to the Womanity Foundation. The Womanity Foundation was investing in social projects in media for gender equality in the region. But a little bit on the personal side, because at the time I was the head of the media programs with the Womanity Foundation, when Amanda came with the idea of Khateera, and we started talking about what we would call the platform. And Amanda said Khateera. And I immediately remembered, so I was a massive lover of Nizar Qabbani, the Syrian poet, the kind of iconic Nizar Qabbani. And I used to consume his poetry a lot when I was a young woman. And he had this poem called The Tree, Ash-Shajara, in Arabic. And he opens it up with saying, Kuni imra'atan khatira, be a dangerous woman. So he was talking about...
Beautiful.
Yeah, he was talking to and about the woman that he loves, encouraging her to really take up all the space that she can take up. And it's a beautiful poem. I do recommend you and everyone to actually go and read it, because it talks about how we can show up, how he was looking at the woman that he loved, but also looking at loving her in all her forms, from her rage to her love, from her vulnerability to her power. So when she said Khateera, I instantly at the time remembered, oh, كوني امرأة خطيرة. This is such a powerful kind of way to open up the conversation. And Khateera it was. We said that would be the name for many, many different reasons. We'll get to talk a little bit more about the essence of the platform and how it links. And that's how it formed. We did the soft launch for the platform in 2019, launched our flagship show, Sma'tuha Minni, realized that the content that we were doing was so needed, so loved, so well received, so important, so impactful, and really from there spun off in 2021 as a standalone entity as Khateera, and the rest is history, like they say.
Beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful story. And how many women are behind Khateera now?
So we have a team of 6. We're very small, a very small team doing a lot, but a team of 6, 5 of whom are, Arab women from the region. In the region, we all come, I think, and complement each other very, very beautifully in terms of how varied and different our backgrounds and experiences are. So a small team, but with a lot of diversity, not only from where we come from in the Arab world, but also what we have been exposed to. And I think also the beauty of it is that we span generations. So I'm the oldest in Khateera, but I'm in my 40s. We have the 30s, we have the 20s. So we really span
that's beautiful.
generations of Arab women, and I think that's what gives us kind of the depth and the breadth that we are able to capture. The different aspects of different backgrounds and different stories.
And talking about the depth of the content, because I was surprised myself, honestly, when I came across your content, like in a sometimes less than 10 minutes video, like the amount of information and knowledge, you are able to share with the audience is amazing. So it's really deep, and it's really like at the intersection of social, environmental, obviously, about the region. So can you tell us more about, how you build, the content for Khateera, and what makes you stand out from other platforms?
Sure. Depth, you got the word right. It's really the depth at which we operate, and I don't think it is something that comes foreign to us. It's not like we try. Obviously, it is very important for the work, but it's a natural inclination to go deep into the topics, to find the nuance, to bring out the story in its fullness, or the concept in its fullness. But I kind of will touch here on the fact that we all have our own personal experiences on how we as Arab women specifically came to our voice, came to the story that we tell ourselves on the inside about who we are as women, and how we want to rise, and what impact we want to carry, what purpose we want to push forward, how we want to be. And, we all have the different stories. And I think reflecting back on a lot of the things that shaped our thinking as Arab women, and I'm not only talking about myself, I'm talking about the rest of the team at Khateera, but also I'm talking collectively. Our personal experiences are personal, but they're also part of the collective. We reflect back and we think of how much depth we have been exposed to as women. I grew up at a time where there was no social media, obviously, but regardless, I was exposed to, giants, the likes of Radwa Ashur, the likes of May Ziadeh, the likes of many other women and men in the region that had such depth to what they were presenting at the time, into shaping my thinking around the place that I occupy in the part of the world that I am, born into. I'll say a very quick story. I think I was about 12 when my father subscribed to Rose Youssef, And Rose Al Youssef was a magazine, a political magazine that was published in Egypt. It was one of the earliest political magazine, I believe. So my dad was, subscribing to this, and I think I was 12 when I first saw the magazine and started looking at it, and I loved it. It was about everything. It was about social constructs. It was about politics. It was about the economy. It was about literature. But consuming all this content made me reflect, who is Rose Al Youssef? Like, her name obviously is Arab and sounds, like it is from the region, and only to find out that she was a Syrian-born, journalist. And so looking at all these women is just and many more is just a part of how my voice, my view of the world was formed. And again, this is not just my personal story. It's the same for Amanda. It's the same for Maria. It's the same for Tala, the team that works at Khateera. So it is trying to bring that depth. You're trying to kind of bring an entire journey that you have went through or we have went through as women ourselves, and being able to really bring all that depth to be able to present to Arab women today a narrative that is very deep, that is very varied, that is very rich, and that is able to give them what it gave us, a better ability to know who we are, to root deeper in who we are, and to add our own flavor from our own personal histories. And so, we go through a very detailed process of looking at a specific subject from various different angles. But again, like I say, it's very natural because that is how we kind of functioned, how we became, how we are. And so that translates and becomes natural into how we go ahead and produce content and treat a subject and bring many different perspectives into it. And I think that is exactly what differentiates us, is that we use a lot of soul. We bring a lot of soul and a lot of homage. We pay homage to what kind of shaped us and many beautiful, iconic Arab women back in our history or even from the present day, and bring it forward in the way that we produce the work, in the way that we narrate the stories, and in the way that we push it out there. So I think soul and depth is what really differentiates us.
And I think there is something else, Rana, because you use a lot humor in your videos and also satire in a way. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, and also the type of topics that you tackle? Because I saw a couple of videos around domestic violence, harassment, like not very easy topics, to talk about, especially mainstream. So how do you manage, to tackle them I would say in a different way and with, a little bit of humor?
I think this is my favorite question so far. Let's see if I get more, something that I like more than this. And the reason why it's my favorite question, because it also allows me to link it back to our heritage in the region. We are so deeply rooted in the region in using satire, dark comedy, and comedy in general as a tool for social change. Maybe I'll actually use, again, another personal example because it helps explain.
I like what you just said, because I didn't know myself.
Really?
But yes. That's a tool that we use.
Oh, very much.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, maybe it'll refresh your memory. So again, I remember I was very, very young, very young. And one of the things, and I grew up actually watching a lot of Egyptian and Syrian theater plays, masrahiyat. And one of the ones that I remember the most was Kasak Ya Watan. Kasak Ya Watan literally translates to "Cheers to You, my homeland." And it was a Syrian theater, play written by, kind of the iconic poet and playwright Mohammed al-Maghut, played by the iconic Dureid Laham. And it was a phenomenal play at the time, really bringing into the spotlight your average Arab citizen at the time, facing these absurd, funny, hilarious situations, but also exposing a lot of the injustices, the oppression, the social constructs that were out of whack, really. And I remember I was extremely young to really understand, systems of social oppression or injustices or, political intricacies of what is happening. But it was so funny. It was so hilarious. And it made me reflect to an extent on what's going on. I want to know more. I want to understand things a bit deeper. This is funny. It engages me in a way where it spurs a certain emotion in me, and it makes me curious. It makes me curious about wanting to know more. And it wasn't just Kasak Ya Watan. It was really at the time also very much present in Egyptian theater. And we were watching this on TV. The Queen of Comedy, Suhair al-Babli, was also extremely well known to have acted in theater, in masrahiyat, in plays that very much would put a spotlight on social issues and economic issues and political issues in a way that is so hilarious, disarming. So they broke these very great big concepts and they brought them to your viewer, the receiver, in a way that really doesn't threaten, doesn't intimidate. On the contrary, you're kind of laughing at it and you're wondering, yeah, that happens to me too. And what is my place in it? But even beyond kind of the most recent, or at least, my personal exposure to it, which is part of the collective exposure to it, if we actually look at our heritage way, way back, I mean, we in Arabic poetry have an entire genre. This stretches back to pre-Islamic times in the region. We have an entire genre that is dedicated to using dark comedy, satire, and humor to criticize your opponent, whoever the opponent is. And it's called al-hija. So al-hija is an entire genre of Arabic poetry that I, for example, studied when I was, studying Arabic language during my school days. And we had to learn, we had to understand what al-hija was, and we had to, kind of be exposed to certain verses. And you should take a look at it. It's brilliant. It's using these lines and words that rhyme to deliver like a biting criticism of whoever it is that you're writing it against. And it was very much used as a tool for social change as well. But also because it was so funny, it would ensure spread because it was hilarious and it was so funny. It was so very, very sharp. And so it spread everywhere and people would learn it. And then you kind of almost have a movement created around it. So I think we use it at Khateera, really, again, paying homage to this rich heritage. And I always say it's on our DNA. We're funny as Arabs.
I agree.
It's funny. And I think it is very much because it is part of our heritage. I mean, at the time when I look at, poetry and the use of al-hija, it used to, Arabs would challenge each other at who could have better mastery over language, because that would give you, a state that is very special. And so it carries on. Today, it's like, who can make us laugh more at our miseries or at the social issues that we face that can really stand out and that can become viral in our current modern terms. But it's really not much of a difference from our heritage. The medium has just changed.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And you're kind of carrying on, this heritage.
Yeah.
And all the content, by the way, is in Arabic. We did not, say it so far, which I think is also a conscious choice for you and your team.
Absolutely. I think the language plays a very vital role. But again, nothing that we are intentional about. It's very natural. We think in Arabic as a team, which is I would say, has become a very unique thing, sadly, maybe.
I was about to say that. Yes.
Sadly, maybe, but we think in Arabic. And there's a huge difference between thinking in Arabic and delivering. Really? There is. Because of so much... really, because it's the foundation, it's the basis that you grew up in. On a very simple level, I write. I used to write a lot more poetry than I do, and I can never write poetry in English. I'll only write poetry in Arabic. But when I want to deal with a subject and kind of dissect it, I switch to English. So there's this almost kind of line that separates soul from practicality, soul from cerebral, right, from the mental, where I find the mental is easier and it flows quicker with, with English, or not quicker, but it's kind of within a certain boundary, versus Arabic that sends me into deeper places. And it's very similar to the content that we do. Because we think in Arabic, we feel like we are able to approach deeper spaces in the journey, whether it's at an emotional level or kind of a spiritual level, right? Then obviously we add the element of the depth and the kind of the science, the fact, the fact base, because we have to also remember that Arabic was not only a language of poetry. There's this misconception that Arabic is very poetic, it's very ancient, but Arabic was the language of science as
True,
well.
Yeah.
Arabic was very much the language of science, was very much the language of al-hujja, which in English means, putting your proof out there, and in a scientific term, proving something. So Arabic becomes also a very big tool that comes naturally and that we cultivate and that we are very intentional about as well.
It's listening to you, it reminds me that we're seeing more and more platforms, like media platform or podcasts, that, like Khateera, they decide to go full Arabic. And that, especially, from, this generation, whenever we want to create something, it has to, have a certain meaning for the region. And I think it's really beautiful to, we shouldn't, and I hope that we'll never lose, our heritage, and language is definitely part of it. But yeah, it's very interesting to see more and more platforms, coming up.
Embracing it, absolutely. I think one of the things is how we continue to make it a language that we use. If we don't use, the language becomes obsolete. And so
that's a danger.
That's the danger. And I think having our content in Arabic brings that to the forefront. We use it on a daily basis. We create from it on a daily basis. It's a part of our life. It's not a separate or a second thought or an extra language that we have. And I think seeing those platforms come in and do the same is really ensuring that the language stays used and practiced, and it's not static.
And doing it, using the modern, tools that we have, social media being one of them, modern way also, as you do in Khateera, to, convey the message, but still, being, rooted in our language and heritage. So I think this is really beautiful.
Absolutely. I know for a fact, so Amanda always tells me, she's like, it's incredible, Rana, you go into places and you're able to switch into speaking with an Egyptian dialect or a Lebanese dialect, because, she's Lebanese, I'm Palestinian. She's like, you switch to Lebanese when you speak to me. And then when Maria enters the conversation, who is our co-founder, me and Maria are speaking in Palestinian. And I tell her, I'm like, it's all with media, because media and actually my group of friends, I was born and raised in the UAE. So I had friends from everywhere growing up in school, from Morocco, from Egypt, from Syria, from Sudan, from Lebanon, from Palestine, from the Gulf, obviously, Emiratis, we had a Kuwaiti. So I'm like, it's a matter of, and from the exposure, Egyptian cinema was huge, obviously. But so was Syrian, so was to an extent Kuwaiti. When I grew up, I was watching a lot of Kuwaiti soap operas, and it was brilliant. and I kind of grew up with them. And now sometimes I have these, Gulf words that sound more Kuwaiti. So media in general as a tool of really a window to the different cultures, but also the culture through the language, is such a powerful tool. So the more that we can put out there in all of our diversity, from kind of all the way from Morocco to Oman, I'm like, let's reignite and really not reignite. Let's come back and speak what we speak in the different dialects, and because really it roots us in the story. It roots us in our own internal dialogue and brings elements that a second language that we have learned, no matter how much proficient we get in it, potentially cannot touch. So yeah.
Beautiful. I want to touch upon your impact. So we are on Impact Talk. Yeah. And that's one of my questions to all my guests is, can you tell us more about basically your impact so far with Khateera platform? Like in terms of numbers, in terms of audience. I know that you built like a very important, community around Khateera. So if you have anything that you could share with us.
Sure, yes. So I believe we're at about 1.4 million followers today. But I think beyond
that's huge.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. Which platform are you in?
So we're across all social media channels. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook. And so that's just the nature of the work. But it gives us an ability to really also speak to different, how the different platforms have. One is more kind of more popular in this country. Another one is more popular in that country with this age group, with that age group. So, but really it gives us the ability to kind of be pan-Arab truly, depending on, the different platforms, but also collectively across all of our channels. But in terms of impact, I think on the numbers side, we actually went ahead with an impact study about 2 years ago to measure the impact of our content on a group of, I think it was about 800 people split between Egypt and Jordan at the time, exposed them to Sma'tuha Minni season 1. So I'm talking 10 episodes, and measured their degree of knowledge and awareness about certain topics before they were exposed to the content, and then after they've completed watching 10 episodes. But not only their knowledge and awareness, we also went ahead and measured to what extent would they be willing to share and discuss something new that they have learned on the show. And the numbers were really stunning because it was one piece of content only. Usually you don't see such high numbers that we got with one piece of content because it takes time. It takes time for information to seep in. It takes time for people to be more ready to act on something that they have just heard or that they have just consumed. But 90% of our respondent, and 800 is quite a decent sample size. So 90% of our sample said that they would be willing to discuss something new that they have learned on the show, which is huge for us because at the end of the day, we also want to see a change and a shift in behavior. Not only in the amount of knowledge and the awareness, but also a shift in behavior. So that was one piece of content that made us realize as well to what extent this is a powerful tool for change. On the other hand, some of the other kind of data points that were really interesting for us, when we did Sma'tuha Minni season 1, again, we had an episode about periods, and it was back in 2020 when we launched the show. It was still more taboo to talk about periods than it is today. And we were stunned to know that the audiences that viewed that episode the most came from Mecca and Saudi Arabia, which was also quite revealing for us in how much people in, maybe places you wouldn't think traditionally would be interested in such topics are actually very, women are very interested to learn from a trusted source that provides depth, that provides facts mixed with.
And that we can relate to.
Absolutely.
You are Arab women.
Absolutely.
So it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And delivered in a way that, brings our heritage of satire and comedy. And so it really, these data, the data is very revealing. But I'd say something even beyond the data, which is more on the qualitative side. We get excited or inspired or really touched the most by the comments that come in from Arab women that say, "Thank you, you've changed my life." Or "Thank you, you have made me kind of come to a closer contact with my real voice that wanted to rise but was not able to." I mean, we ran focus groups before we launched Sma'tuha Minni, and we kind of showed the episode because we were tackling some heavy taboo topics. So we wanted to get an understanding of reactions. And I will never forget this. We had a group of 10 young Arab women, and they were from all over the place, Syria and Egypt and Lebanon and Morocco and the Gulf. And we showed one episode, and that episode was, kind of one of our most, kind of taboo topics, where we're hinting at, a pleasure and topics that are very taboo for women to talk about in the region. And one of the women stood up and said, please make sure you release this episode, because she is basically able to verbalize the inner dialogue that I can never verbalize. But it's not just me. I think we can all agree in this room that we have had these thoughts. We have spoken about these things between ourselves, like just the inner dialogue. Please make sure this sees the light of day. She's brave, she's bold. So getting that kind of feedback is truly like transformative for us, because it just makes us even more stubborn about what we're doing. So that is, I think, beyond the data, that's again the essence and what we keep coming back to, in that the minute we are able to put it out there and we are able to kind of rise in it, we're inspiring, we're inspiring a large amount of Arab women to also rise in their own voice, in their own way, in whatever they're doing in their lives.
It's at the end your mission, what you're trying
Yes.
to achieve. What you said is very interesting, because I see a couple of very good best practices, because you're not, and I like what you just explained about the study and then the focused groups. So it's not just about doing, creative content and pushing it on social media. There is a lot of work, behind it to make sure that you reach your goals and your objective, in terms of, transformative type of content, and making sure that there is a before and after. It's very, very interesting, how you work, around that. And I think it's definitely something very inspiring for any, any company or, someone, interested into create content. And now, if we think about the media industry, it's a conversation that we had, because I love, Khateera platform and other platforms that we see, coming up lately the past few years. So what the traditional media industry can learn actually from the work, of Khateera, and also what do you want to see changing, in this industry, because it's massive, the influence that they can have on people in the region. So what do you want them to see, doing differently?
Absolutely. I think one of the things I remember that we spoke about very early on in our journey is how Khateera was an experiment that we had set out to prove. I think it was a biased experiment, because we knew we wanted to prove something. So not a fully objective one. And we had intended to go out and prove that when you do content with depth, with soul, content that actually speaks to our personal and collective experience, and by personal, I don't mean just me or even the Khateera team, the individual personal stories of Arab women and how they make for the collective story. If we set out to do content that is deep and nuanced and soul rich from that perspective, and speaks authentically to our stories, our heritage, our lineage of Arab women, that it would work. And that it would not just work from the sense that it would generate fantastic engagement. It would also work according to the success metrics of the media industry, commerciability and being able to kind of monetize, from that. And I believe we aspire to have that impact on the industry, for them to actually look and see content that is being done with depth, with nuance, with soul. And we say we do Arab women-centric content. We don't only talk about gender equality or the different topics. We actually don't. We talk about a lot of other things that are happening more at a social level, or even a human level in the region, but we bring the lens of Arab women to these topics, which I think a lens that is currently today missing from mainstream media. And again, we don't do it just by kind of applying a superficial layer. We do it from our own essence, from knowing our audience very well, from centering our audience, centering their stories, centering their comments, centering their feedback, and integrating it into the kind of flow of what we produce and publish and create from and think about. And I think that there's a lot of that we hope the media industry, and we know some of them are, because we also get great feedback from other groups that come and say, we love the way that you do content, and how can we collaborate, and how can we.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's starting to be very obvious that we do resonate, and it's not because we're only applying a formula. We do apply a formula, the kind of the behavioral change and how we go about creating the creative process, but we apply also a lot of soul, and we apply a lot of nuance and depth and authenticity to it. So that is, I think, what is starting to show up, and hope that would be able to actually change the depth of the media industry here, so that the narratives are deeper, the narratives are more personal. Sometimes when we talk about gender equality, it's even the term itself. I mean, gender equality is it's very mental. It's very mental. It's very cerebral. It's but really, the essence of it is that if I sit here and just have a conversation with you about, let's say, violence against women and girls, I bet you'll be able to find a story that you resonate with from your own circles, either your own circles through lineage, or through our mothers and grandmothers and aunts and neighbors and women that we know, that you'll be able to connect the emotion to it, rather than saying the rates of violence against women and girls have quadrupled. Data is extremely important, but when it comes to media, I'd love for us to see in the region more of the emotion, more of and it's not only to evoke emotion and the receiver, it is where we as media producers connect with the emotion behind the work that we're putting out there, because that's what deepens authenticity. When you're detached and you're only talking about a number, or you're talking about a concept, or you're talking about justice as a conceptual term, or freedom as a term, or equality as a conceptual term, there is a distance between you and your product, what you're putting out there in the world. When you're able to actually connect emotion to it, when you're able to sit and reflect, I have seen my grandmother, suffer from X, Y, and Z. I've seen my aunt. I've seen whoever it is. I've
makes it more human.
It makes it more human. And so you're creating from a space where you are deeply authentic. And that's why we get this question a lot. It's like, oh, how come your content is so authentic? How do you get that authenticity? And I'm like, well, we connect with the emotion. We make it personal, because we don't even have to try to make it personal. It is very personal. Natural. It's natural. Mm-hmm. I'll bring you 100 stories from my personal history, from our collective history, that can touch on a particular point. And that's, for me, is part of the creative process, right? For us as well, Khateera, it's part of the creative process, is that we sit and we let the emotion seep through, and we're like,
So it must be very intense to produce, your series on Khateera, I guess.
It's both intense and fun, because we do comedy and humor. So it's and we definitely leave room for all these emotions to show up, the intensity, but also the humor. And we operate in a region as well that is in a constant flux. I mean, Amanda's based in Beirut, Maria's based in Amman, Tala's based in Egypt, I'm based here, in Dubai, Tina. So we really operate. So there's the creative process, and then there is everything that's transpiring around us that puts us in a state where we have to make room for both the intensity and the seriousness sometimes of the topics and what's happening around us in the world, but we find a lot of healing in humor and in comedy to be able to kind of also help us continue pushing the work forward.
Can you tell us more, Rana, about the new projects for Khateera? Because I saw like a slightly different format now on YouTube. It was like kind of a podcast, but again, a very personalized, different version of not a podcast like today. So if you can tell us more about, what you're working on.
Sure. We just actually released 2 shows. The one you're talking about is Bala Sukkar, which is hosted by Khateera's editor-in-chief, Tala Al-Isa, where she meets 4 women every episode, talking about a specific topic. We've done living abroad as expat women in the Arab world or even outside the Arab world. We've talked about divorce. We've had the most recent episode about, cancer and living with cancer and living after, cancer and all of that. So that is very much like you said, it's more of a adet banat. It's more of like sitting together as women and as girls.
It's very intimate.
Very intimate. Yeah, very intimate. It's with women that have incredible stories. Not that I think there's any Arab woman that doesn't have interesting stories, really. And it's really trying to bring the personal, trying to really bring everyone's story to the forefront and what they've gained from it and sharing that. So there's that has just also gotten released. But we also have Araish, which is I think for me, Araish is very, very close to my heart because...
What does it mean?
Araish, yes. Araish is like kind of the little crisps and biscuits and crackers that you have when you're having tea. But Araish in the Arab world is usually you're having your tea with like the za'atar Araish or something like that. So Araish is just like, let's have, kind of some tea and some snacks and I'll tell you a story. That's the approach of Araish. And Araish has a very, very special place in my heart because it is really part of our effort at Khateera to anchor Arab women in the lineage of incredible Arab women that we have. So, the one I was referring to earlier in our conversations, saying I grew up with the Radwa Ashurs, the Maiziyadas, and reading for the Rose Youssef, reading from what they have produced. But beyond that, wondering about how they managed to find their voice with such clarity and how they have risen into who they are and what's their stories. And Araish is that. Araish is taking a very Khateera Arab woman from our heritage, from our lineage, so that we can tell their stories and we can, and this is not about, again, whether we, agree with everything they say or no, this is about taking inspiration from their clarity, from the way that they have broken, ceilings and taboos. And not only that, from how they have lived their lives unapologetically, authentically, and being able to kind of narrate these stories because that's part of what we do. We want to anchor Arab women. I sometimes, I don't think I ever miss whenever I have any kind of meeting with Arab women, whether it's social, with friends, to remind them, I'm like, remember the lineage that you come from, it's like, take pride in it. We come from like a lineage of very strong, funny, educated, serious, all kinds of Arab women. So let's remember them together because it just gives us such a strong base that we are able to kind of rise today from and be able to add onto their journey and carry the journey forward. So Araish is very, very close to my heart in that way. We actually did an episode about my ziyada. We did an episode about tahya karaoke. I'm not gonna...
Most of us women, I've never heard about them.
Yeah.
I wasn't born in the region, but I saw, some of your content, and I was so surprised and so, pleasantly surprised by, those amazing women that, break barriers, years ago, and that you can really, be inspired from. So
absolutely, and so it is subtitled. So please go ahead. Because there's a lot of richness. There's just a lot of, it's incredible how their thoughts are still very, very relevant. Situations, of course, have changed and social contexts have changed, but you will always be able to find something and you'll say, oh my goodness, that resonates so much today in me. And I think that's the effect. That's the whole purpose. I mean, part of our mission, actually, because we spoke, or part of our guiding principles, is anchoring women in their heritage and lineage as Arab women. And the other part is redefining and reshaping the narrative. So, what these women have experienced and have shared with us is not static. It's not stuck to one time. If we come today and add our collective experiences and voices as Arab women today to what they have embodied and produced, we are making this, the effect and the impact even bigger. And that's kind of part also of what we do. And at the end, the third part of what we do is how do we inspire? How do we inspire using this combo of anchoring and reshaping the narrative? How do we inspire women to go ahead and say, this voice, this little voice that was telling me to do this, it's actually quite big. So let me go ahead and do it. So it's very, very grounding, I think, as well.
You're doing a fantastic job, Rana, and your team. I mean, it's really, I could feel from the conversation, even if, our audience might not have seen yet your content, that it's huge. There is a huge work, passion, soul behind the work you do. And it's really fantastic, and it's needed. It's absolutely needed. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the best way for people to really experience, Khateera, is to go and watch it.
Absolutely.
So how they can, consume your content?
Absolutely. Just check us out, Khateera, on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok. We're there. Our content is there. It is also subtitled, as you say. We understand and we know that we actually have quite a contingent of Arab women that perhaps maybe have not grown up, in the region, or have had the same, experiences. And so we've made sure we subtitle it as well. Our main aim is to really bring this richness to everyone, breaking through language barriers as well. So yeah, we're on all channels. Check us out. And have a laugh with us sometimes as well, as we leverage comedy sometimes to talk about the crazy things that we have to live through.
Thank you. Thanks, Rana. We are nearing the end of our episode. It was such a pleasure to have you on Impact Talk and learn more about Khateera.
Thank you so much, Nadine. I really appreciate this time. Your question sent me to a deep place, which is really a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in until the end. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're on YouTube, Anrami, Podio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Choose your platform, subscribe, comment, and see you soon for the next episode.